Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another social emotional workshop. Today we will be dealing with conflict resolution. Joe, welcome back, and you can go ahead and get started.
Thank you. All right, well, let me share my screen and we'll talk about the topic we have scheduled for today. Everybody's favorite, conflict. All right, here we go. All right, conflict resolution. Just again, the introduction. I'm from Cara, Southeastern Michigan. I am a community health educator, which means I go around the community and I educate. And a lot of the education I do is based around parenting skills. We run parenting series, four series a year. We have a winter, spring, summer, and fall. I also go around and do anything for drug prevention, protective factors and risk factors about drug prevention and how to build healthy homes, drug-free homes, safe homes, and relationships. Well, today's topic of conflict resolution, it doesn't matter if you're a teenager or an adult, that we all have some struggles, we all have challenges and disagreements in the world. So just to describe a conflict is when a person has a need of another and that need is not being met. That's all it is I have a need and I'm not getting my need met, so that's going to affect me in some way. So now I am going to use whatever skills I have to try to get that need met. And we call that personal power. We all have personal power in our lives. We use the personal power in either a positive way by getting our needs met in unhealthy, in healthy ways, safe ways. I'm going to use my skills respectfully. So I can use positive personal power to get my need met, or I can use negative personal power to get my need met. That's getting those needs met unhealthy, disrespectful, explosive, manipulative, any way I can do that. So as human beings, we all have personal power. When you're born into this world as an infant, you have personal power. Teenagers, adults, seniors, we all have personal power. So when a baby has a need, let's say the baby's need is to be fed. How does that baby get his need met?
Cry.
You're gonna cry. So positive or negative, let's just call that negative. But that baby is using the only personal power that they have to get the need met. So if I'm hungry, I'm gonna cry. If I'm dirty, I'm gonna cry. If I'm lonely, I'm gonna cry. If I'm scared, I'm gonna cry. If I'm just don't know what's going on, I'm gonna cry. And that cry is gonna get my need met. So that baby is using the only personal power that they have, which seems like it's negative, but for that baby, it's actually getting the job done. So we all have these needs. And how do we get these needs met? We have physical needs, emotional, social, intellectual, spiritual, environmental. These are kind of like the wellness circles that we've talked about in the past. So we all have to kind of feed these wellness circles here. And if I am out of orders, like my emotional needs aren't being met, my social needs aren't being met, I'm kind of isolated. If my intellectual needs aren't being met at work, I'm not stimulated, or as a teenager, I'm just apathy. I don't feel like doing anything. I can't contribute to this world for whatever reason. If my spiritual needs aren't being met, I don't feel connected to anything. Well, there's going to be consequences from that. We are going to either get that need met in a negative way or a positive way. So all of our behavior, whether you're an infant, a teenager, or an adult, needs dictate our behavior. And all behavior is communication. So if I have a need, I don't know how to get it, but if I explode all over you and I get my need met, I'm going to start learning, well, the louder person wins, or the louder I am, I get my need met. But let's just move on just a little bit, and I hope I'm making that clear. So if we have a need, these are some unhealthy approaches. Any of these familiar to anybody, or has anybody used any of these styles to get your needs met? And I imagine I've used many of them. Yelling, sarcasm, embarrassing, shame, even attacking physical. Sometimes you might have to punch somebody in the mouth to get your need met. Of course, unhealthy outcomes, suspensions, assault and battery, courts, that kind of thing. But we all kind of have some unhealthy behaviors or approaches to get our needs met. The risk is that when these do work, we take them into our kind of adulthood. If we learn these in our childhood, in our teenage life, in our youth, and we just continue them into adulthood, if they worked for us. So, a little conversation. Why is conflict so hard? Or maybe it's not for some people, and help us out here.
Because it could cause hurt feelings.
Okay, it can cause hurt feelings, so we might kind of avoid it.
Or for some people, they might think it just brings drama, or they don't know how to deal, or some people are very defensive. So trying to be open and honest with how to get a conflict resolved, people will become defensive, and dealing with those types of people can be a little hard.
Okay, I can agree with that. Absolutely.
Even possibly like the fear of ruining a friendship or a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hard too because people don't always view conflict in the same way. So what you might think is conflict, someone else might not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Absolutely. So you guys, our upbringing might make it hard because we really didn't have a model of how to handle situations in a healthy way. Maybe the loudest person wins, or maybe the quietest person doesn't get hurt. So our upbringing didn't teach us well, possibly. Life experiences equals your beliefs. So whatever that life experience you had about conflict, should you stand up for yourself? Should you make yourself be heard? Should you rock the boat? You're right, shake the fence a little bit. Different personalities and behavioral styles could make it hard. Some people are kind of sharks. They just go right in for the attack. Some people are foxes. They're a little bit more clever and they maneuver a little bit more. Some people are turtles. They'll just hide in their shells. So we all kind of have our own personal style on how we handle conflicts. Fear of being hurt. You guys mentioned that one, or hurting others. Fear of being misunderstood. I think you guys mentioned that one also. Like, why should I even bring this up? They're just not going to understand how I feel, or not going to understand that this causes a problem for me. Or fear of not being taken seriously. So, oh, there you go again. Oh my goodness, there you go complaining. So you're just not going to be taken seriously. And that bottom quote, when it matters the most, we do our worst. So many times in parenting, they say, when children are at their worst, we need to be at our best. So if the child's at 10, we can't go and be at 8, 9, or 10 with them. Same thing with the conflict. Usually conflicts are something like I said, that they need to be met. We have a problem and it's not being met. So now when it means a lot, I'm going to be my worst. I'm going to kind of go with that last slide of all those unhealthy, unhelpful ways to solve conflicts. Now, this has been around the internet for hundreds of years. Has everybody seen this picture? And do you see, or I should ask, what do you see? Does everybody see a woman? Do you see an old woman?
Yes.
Does everybody see the old woman?
No, I see like a young woman looking away, like a black hat and like a feather.
Okay, very good. A young woman, yep. And it's kind of hard to do this virtually, but so some people see a younger woman looking away. Now, this is perception. So if some people can see the young woman, and if some people can see the older woman, some people can see both sides of the story. Now, somebody who can't see the young woman, could somebody that can see them try to explain where they're at, where she is?
For the old woman, or?
Well, describe the old woman.
So the old woman, so the neck of the young woman, so if you look down where her
What
neck
young woman?
is, yeah, with the young woman, I'm sorry, that's actually the chin of the old woman. And then the young woman's jawline is actually the old woman's
No,
nose.
yeah.
Could everybody see, after that explanation, could everybody see both women now, the young one and the old one? Just curious.
It's like way harder for me to see the old woman. I think I like saw it for like a second and then it jumped right back to the young woman.
Okay, so you keep on going back to the young
Yeah.
woman, but you see the old woman, but it kind of disappears, right, when you
Yeah.
see the, okay.
I can see both now.
Very good. And this is kind of like a conflict. You'll see the old woman and you'll say it's an old woman, and the other person says it's a young woman, and we fight over whether it's an old woman or a young woman. But obviously it's both, as long as we could kind of understand each other's perception and describe it. Now, they showed this picture to the younger children and school-age children, and do you know what they saw? They saw a badger going into a cave. This is the badger here, this dark spot up here. I guess this is his backside. I don't know what a badger's tail looks like, but going into this cave here, because that's all the life experience that that child has and their perception. Our brains are designed to see things that are common to us. So usually adults, when we look at something, our brains kind of process all the data in our lives and point out familiar things. So for human beings, we usually point out a face. So if we're looking at something abstract, we're going to say, oh, there's two eyes and a nose and a mouth, because we're comfortable with that. We've seen it and it's easy. But the children saw a badger going into a cave. Now, raise your hand when you see a horse, or say, I can see a horse.
I can see a horse and the
All
other animal.
Okay, and you see the frog
Yeah.
and the horse. Anybody else see the horse?
If I turn my head to the side, then I can see it, but not if my head's just normal up and down.
Okay, so yeah, so it might help if you turn your head to the right a little bit. And just to help you ladies out, and gentlemen, if there's any out there.
Yep, I see the horse now.
Does that help anybody? Okay. Yeah, that helps when I flip it over 1/4 turn. So this is just like a conflict. I mean, if I told you there was a horse there, we would fight about it and I would describe it until somebody sees it. And I like the last one where somebody says, oh, I can see them both now. But I always gravitate to the young woman. I can see the old woman. So just think about these different perceptions when you're having a conflict. So now, whenever you're in a conflict with somebody, there's one factor that's going to make the difference between damaging that relationship or deepening that relationship. And that factor is, can anybody guess what that one factor in a conflict that's going to damage or deepen? Tough question, out of the blue. I can't imagine anybody getting it, but have a drum roll, please. What is that one factor that's going to make all the difference?
Huh.
Attitude. Our attitude is going to make all of the difference in a conflict on how we approach it. So in this book here, it's called Crucial Conversations. They say that these conversations that we're going to have, crucial conversations, are things that have opposing points of view. There are very strong emotions behind them, and there's high stakes of them not getting solved. And let me give you some examples of a crucial conversation. Ending a relationship. Is that a crucial conversation? It's always tough. I probably stayed in a relationship 6 months too long because I didn't know how to end it. Might be sharing too much. Anybody feel me? Anybody stay in a relationship too long because they didn't know how to end it? Oh, great. I'm the only one. I was just kidding. I was just setting that up.
Oh, I have Joe. You're not the only one.
Okay. How about talking to a coworker who behaves offensively or makes suggestive comments? Is that a crucial conversation you can easily have?
Yes.
Giving boss feedback about her or his behavior. Ooh, that's a crucial conversation. Critiquing a colleague's work. Asking a roommate to move out. These are pretty emotional and strong emotions behind them and have high stakes of the outcome. Asking a friend to repay a loan. Dealing with a rebellious teen. So a lot of these crucial conversations, they say in here that one of two things happen in a crucial conversation if you don't have the skills. They call it fight. Hold on, give me a second. Silence or violence. You're either going to go silent and not deal with the conversation or the problem, or you're going to go violent, where you're going to start yelling and screaming and maybe even a punch. So these crucial conversations have silence or violence outcomes without tools. So this quote, my attitude will always be based on how you treat me. Now in the youth, teenagers that are watching this, the brains of a teenager aren't fully hardwired. They're more reactive and emotional. So this could be true for a teenager, because if somebody walked up on me sideways and started coming with an attitude, I'm going to meet that attitude because I have no other skills. Although when we do get some skills and we mature a little bit, it doesn't matter what the attitude of the other person is, because they're going to come up to you with an attitude, but you're going to be the bigger person. You're going to be the person with the skills on how to have a healthier outcome. Although if you didn't, you come up to me with an attitude, I'm going to meet you with a strong attitude from myself. So these attitudes are contagious, and is yours worth catching? But with emotional intelligence and some conversation skills and communication skills, that we don't have to catch somebody else's attitude. Now, our last training last week, we did talk about these 4 styles, but I'm going to revisit them here. That 4 styles of communication, we have the passive, and we mentioned this earlier, that's the fear of upsetting somebody. You're going to sacrifice your own needs to keep other people happy. And that results with resentment, feeling taken advantage of, and you can only sacrifice so much until your needs get so big that you are going to kind of use your personal power to get that back. Now, the aggressive, that's more of that hostile, dominating, intimidating, threatening, pushing. And that is always, those people are always interested in winning. You might feel guilty after on how you treated them, but you're always interested in winning. So the most aggressive person wins, the loudest person wins. In the passive aggressive, this is more indirect. You fear conflict. You don't want the conflict or the rejection. So you kind of use these sarcastic, joking remarks because you want to hurt them to let them know you're not a punk and you can't be pushed around. But I'm going to say something negative in a passive way. And that's usually sarcasm, like, no, fine. No, everything's fine with you, I guess. So you're saying everything's fine with you, but your face doesn't match the words. And whispering under your breath. So in a conflict, you'll be like, yeah, sure, whatever. And you mumble and somebody says, what did you say? What'd you say? Nothing. That's all passive aggressive behavior. Because you want them to know that you can't be pushed around, but you don't want the rejection or the conflict. So you're going to underhand it with sarcasm and mumbling under your breath and saying something as you're walking away. And the assertive, which I wish everybody would take some classes and education and learning. And like I mentioned, this book here, Crucial Conversations, is like one of the best communication books I've ever read. They go step by step. Also, this one here, I'm almost done. I'm 3/4 of the way done with this one. Nonviolent communication, a language of life. This, I wouldn't know which one to recommend, Crucial Conversations or Nonviolent Communication, because they are both amazing. And for parents, there is a communication book out there, pretty old, probably from the late 80s or early 90s. It's called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, and How to Listen So Kids Will Talk. Really cool book for parents. Okay, so what's the outcome from some of these communication styles? And if anybody knows, what is it, the 7 Habits to Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey, we know that there are different outcomes. We can have a win-lose outcome. You win, they lose. What communication style would probably get that result? The aggressive, probably. If you're aggressive, then you would probably win, but you hurt the other person. And then we have the lose-lose. This is where both people lose. And it could be the aggressive, it could be the passive, it could be the passive aggressive, where both of you lose. You can have a lose-win. This is where you lose and they win. And that would be that passive communication style, where you don't want to fight, you're just going to say, yes, you're right, and I don't want to deal with it. So you don't get your needs met, but they do. Or what Stephen Covey comes up with, we have the win-win. What way could both of us win in this conversation? And that's going to take skills. That's going to take respect. It's going to take assertiveness, communication. In some of these communication styles, if you've heard of the you messages, and a lot of parents use you messages, a lot of teenagers use you messages, even at work, we can use you messages. Now, you messages, they blame, they nag, they put down. And here's a list of you messages. And this isn't all inclusive, of course. You always, you never. If you don't, you better. How many times must I tell you? You better stop it right now. All of these are pretty aggressive, pretty blaming and nagging and putting down. And it always kind of gets back those people wanting to call your faults out. So if you say you never, you always, that person's going to say, what about you? You did this last week. And then we have this big old you fight back and forth. So that brings up barriers to communication and disrespect and defensiveness. And we'll learn the opposite of the you message in a moment. But right now, it is the E plus R equals O. A really valuable formula here. The event plus the response equals the outcome. So what do you guys have control over? What would somebody have control over? The event, the response, or the outcome?
Response.
All right. Anybody think of anything else? We all agree. Response. So the only thing, we don't have control over the outcome. Sometimes I hear people say we have control over the outcome on the side, influencing how we respond. So, and I always give a situation of a car wreck. You got in an accident. That's the event. We have no control over the event. Now the response, let's say I get out of the car and I go apologize to the other person to say, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. It was all my fault. Are you okay? Here, I got insurance. Let's talk about this. What would the outcome be? Anybody, if I came up to you really nice and apologized and made sure you're all right?
Probably depends on the type of person you got in an accident with. They could say, hey,
They can punch you in the mouth.
yeah, I don't care if you apologize, you wrecked my car. Or if they're like you, they could say, oh, it's okay, it's an accident, that's why we have insurance, and move on. I think it just depends on the type of person that you come in contact with.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you can come up to them with the nicest response of apology and acceptance, and they can blow up all over you. Now, the car accident, the response, let's say I get out of my car just raging towards you and saying, I can't believe it, you are on your phone and you're all angry and you better have insurance. What's the outcome?
I feel like a lot of times people like match each other's demeanor and attitude. So if you were really nice, they might be mean at first, but then they might slowly start to match yours. And then the same thing, maybe they weren't that mad, but then they see you getting furious, they're going to match that.
Yeah, that's kind of those quotes that we just went, is your attitude is contagious, is yours worth catching, that quote. And that could be if they were rational, but we remember some people don't know how to solve problems or conflicts. And some people's life experience, their home life, the way they solve problems in their home might be different than that. So that share, Becky, you're right. They could adapt. So we can influence somebody's outcome, but we have no control over the outcome. I can come exploding all over them and they can be like, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I can see you're really angry, and they can calm me down. Or they can just explode all over me and we have a case of road rage and very negative outcomes. So we really don't know or have any control over the outcome. All we have control over is the response. Just like Pavlov's dog. You ring the bell, you feed the dog. You ring the bell, you feed the dog. You ring the bell, the dog salivates because he's expecting food, and you keep that up. Then you ring the bell without feeding them and they salivate. It's conditioned. But we're not Pavlov's dog. We don't have to explode or use our go-to problem-solving skill if it's unhealthy. We have independent will and choice. We have our conscious to say, you know what, I shouldn't do this. You know, there could be some unhealthy outcomes. We have our professionalism on how we feel about ourselves, and we're more professional. We have our self-esteem that we don't want to risk. So we're going to slow down and use our thoughts and our emotions and our choices in a good, healthy way. Let me see if I can hook any of you. All right, I'm going to tell you a story, and this is, everybody's going to have to respond. I want you to say stop 5 times. And if you don't want to respond, do it to yourself and be honest to see if this worked out or not. We're going to say stop 5 times. Stop, 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 stop. Did everybody say it with me in their heads, I hope? And out loud. So now we're going to spell stop. S-T-O-P. Now I'm going to say it 5 times again, and say it with me in your houses. Stop, 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 stop. All right, now I want you to, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to just answer it as fast as you can, and just answer this really easy question. What do you do when you come to a green light? All right, it's kind of interesting to do it in virtual, but did anybody say stop?
No, said go.
You said go, all right.
Yeah, I said go too.
My husband is always trying to trick me with jokes, so I was prepared for like a tricky.
Same with me, Katie. My dad is constantly doing that. I was on the edge waiting.
Yeah, me too.
So nobody wants to get hooked into that joke or fall for that that prank and stuff. So we're thinking of the answer. And let me tell you, in a room, it's a lot easier. And if you guys were a little bit more take yourselves off of mute and stuff, when everybody is saying stop, 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 and I say, what do you do when you come to a green light? I'm telling you, 80% of the room says go. Or I'm sorry, the opposite, stop. All right. So now, in that conflict, we really need to assume the best. What is the most generous assumption you can make about this other person's intentions? Right? So research reminds us that it is never to our children's interest or our interest to think somebody did something to them on purpose. When somebody does something, we have to say what was going on. What's the belief behind the behavior? So give them the kind of the best assumption on, did they really do that on purpose? Did they want to hurt me? Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe, you know, they just lost their job. Maybe they have some money struggles. Maybe they're having parenting challenges or something. And if you're a teenager, if you're in the school, maybe somebody steps on your toe in the hall. Did they really do that and trip you on purpose, or was it an accident? Or somebody knocked the books off of your desk. They turned around and knocked all the books off your desk. Did they do that on purpose, or was it an accident? Did they throw their backpack over their shoulder? Maybe the teacher just yelled at them. They're really frustrated and they just rush by your desk and knock books over. I mean, really look at that backstory. What is the most generous assumption you can make?
Can I just say too that from experience, I feel like a lot of people are really good at hiding that. So you wouldn't expect them to give you that reaction, but that is what you end up getting.
Yes. Thank you for that. So forgiveness, you don't get to forgiveness without empathy. So knowing that backstory, giving them that grace of, did they do it on purpose or they're having a bad day? So we really need to get to forgiveness. And we need that empathy, because if I didn't have any empathy, I wouldn't care on how I behaved. I can do anything to you and not care on how it affects you. But if I had empathy, I'm going to filter my behavior through my empathy, saying that I shouldn't do this because that would make her feel bad. Let me give you an empathy test right now. Here's an old woman walking down the street with a purse full of money. You can push her over and take her money. Would you?
No.
No? All right, one person wouldn't. The rest of you guys would take that money, huh? I'm trying to get some here. All right, no. No, okay. Most of the time I get no's. I was in this one room and somebody said yes, depending on if I needed it, what the situation was. I was like, wow, thank you for being honest. Oh, that's interesting. So no, we didn't, but that's not the test. Now, the people who said no, why wouldn't you push her over and take the money?
I don't know, because that's not nice.
It's,
All right, not
it's not right.
nice.
It's
Not
wrong.
right. It's wrong. Anybody else?
I wouldn't want anybody to do it to me.
Okay, Susan, thank you for that. Anybody else?
I
Okay,
don't think
so
it would even like cross my mind, honestly, that that was an option to do. I don't know.
yeah, it's like that's, I know this is a pretty excessive example, but let me tell you what empathy is. If your reason for not pushing her over and taking that money is because it's wrong, because you'll end up in jail maybe, because it's unethical and it's bad, that's not empathy. You're a good citizen of the community. You wouldn't knock her over and take her money because it's wrong, and you don't do that. But the one person who said, I wouldn't want to make her feel like that, you know, that's somebody's grandmother. I wouldn't want to put that lady through that fear of being knocked over. That's empathy. So just to make the people who said it's wrong feel better, I answered that it's wrong. Not that we don't have empathy, but that's not the first thought that we thought of. The first thought was, it's wrong. You don't do that. It's against the law. You shouldn't steal. That's not empathy. Interesting scenario. So empathy, the concern for others is essential to dealing with big emotions. So if you had that empathy, that's going to help us deal with these big emotions of this conflict. Angry people, how are we going to deal with angry people? We need to have that backstory that I was talking about, and you need to have a little bit of empathy of what they're going through. So we really need to teach our kids and teenagers watching this to have that empathy for that other person. Is going to help you not be so angry and explosive. And for the teenagers watching, that our empathy in a human brain isn't really developed. It's developed in the prefrontal cortex, and that isn't really fully hardwired until, you know, the mid-20s. Sure, we have empathy when we're younger and stuff, but empathy that's connected to those thoughts and those feelings and the processing consequences and thinking of somebody's backstory, usually teenagers are a little bit more self-centered, that it's all the world evolves around them. And then when you get a little bit older and our brains hardwired, then we start kind of caring about others. Not saying that you teenagers out there don't care about others, but it is a more cognitive processing in the prefrontal cortex of our brains. But with empathy, it helps us deal with those big emotions. So now when bad things happen that we need to address, thinking of that person's backstory and the empathy, we need to reframe what was going on. So you see this negative self-talk. I've never done it before. This is too hard. I'll never be able to do it. It's too complicated. I don't have the resources. So all that negative self-talk needs to be flipped around to positive thinking. It's an opportunity. I'll tackle it from a different angle. So just like conflict might be those things we shared in the beginning on why is conflict hard? Because of either our family modeling, that want to hurt somebody's feelings. And then we have to look at conflict in a positive way to say, we really need to both get our needs met. I need to have this conversation so we will both be understood. So whenever we're dealing with anger or conflict, we need to kind of reframe it and repackage it. So let me give another example of somebody that you're driving and somebody cuts you off. What is your first thought of that person cutting you off? Has anybody been cut off lately?
No, because of COVID and it's really cold outside.
So we
I
don't,
haven't really been going anywhere, but
yeah, we don't go
my
drive.
my first thought would be like, where is it that they have to go that they're speeding so quickly that they have to cut me off? Like, is it really
Oh,
that important, you know, to risk my life or their life? and possibly get in an accident? Like, is it worth it? That's how
Wow,
I, yeah.
very rational. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Anybody else? You tell me there's no road rage in this room right here. Nobody's ever flipped somebody off or got angry.
I was just gonna say, well, my response is not that nice. That's for sure.
You get in front of them and cut them off, and you speed up and tailgate them. And because, our needs, what was our need at the time? To be safe. Our needs is to be respected. Our need is to be nice, have people be nice to us. And then when somebody cuts us off, we're like, you run, and you're very angry and you're triggered. That would be that negative self-talk. How dare them cut me off? They almost hurt me. I got my baby in the back seat. I can't believe this. I have to go and beat my horn at them and stuff. Now, reframing, let's see, how can we reframe that? And that last response about, wondering what their day was like, that's a good reframing. Let's reframe it like this. What if you say that was the best driver you've ever seen? I mean, they missed you by 1 inch. That is a professional driver. I mean, can you know anybody that could put you in that situation that missed you by 1 inch? How awesome driver. I would stop at the light and get out of my car and tell them, man, I really appreciate your driving skills. You are amazing. Well, I wouldn't really tell you to do that because that could lead to other things. But that reframing of, wow, nobody got hurt. That was scary. They might have been worrying about their dying loved one. They might be coming from a hospital. They might just be dealing with their teenager. We don't know. What is our thought that we can give them to have empathy and understand that they didn't say, oh, there's Joe Galino on the road. I know him. I'm going to go in front of him and then I'm going to cut him off. They didn't do that on purpose. So they missed you. You can realize that nobody got hurt. It was a scary moment. To reframe the conflict in our brains. It's a hard thing to do. So the risk of these unhealthy ways to get our needs met, if we're not getting our needs met and we're using our negative personal power, that kind of leads to this risk of drug or alcohol use. It lowers our self-esteem when we have a lot of conflicts and we're not getting our needs met. Either we have a win-lose or lose-lose or a lose-win. It's really unhealthy and stressful in our relationships. So maybe we might start drinking more, start doing any unhealthy behavior. A lack of flexibility because there's always conflict and I don't want to give in and be a punk and I can't win, I don't know. So it's really inflexible. And when somebody is that inflexible, not to be able to negotiate in a healthy way, then that kind of builds up in them and they might start using drugs or alcohol. And another risk factor is low social skills and emotional competence. So if I don't have the skills to deal with conflict and I don't have the emotional competence to have healthy relationships and communicate my needs in a healthy way, that's going to be a risk factor of self-medicating and dealing with unhealthy, unsafe relationships. So the protective factors is the healthy coping skills, the communication, the reframing, the empathy. So it's important to self-monitor ourselves. This is I'm going to save this for the anger management because anger management is going to have a lot of correlating slides from this conflict resolution. So some of the things you'll hear repeated in the anger management class on Thursday. But this is just when we're high challenge and low stress, our blood is in the front of our brains, which is our thinking brain. And when we're stressed, anxiety, or threat, our thinking brain blood goes all to the middle of our brain into our emotional brain. And when we're in our emotional brain, what are we? Reactive, defensive, angry, self-protecting. And a lot of teenagers, they don't have that prefrontal cortex hardwired yet. So a lot of their thinking comes from the middle part of their brain. So they really need to take that pause and that thought of the consequences, and they need to breathe so that the blood can go back to the front of the brain where they can be a little bit more rational. So this self-management, we really need to monitor our own perceptions. We need to ask ourselves, am I being realistic in the present moment? Do I really expect to come to work and not have any employees that or workmates that I can't get along with? Do I really think, am I really being realistic of having a relationship that we don't agree on some things? Are you really being realistic to the present moment? Am I making assumptions? So are you saying that this person did this because? Are you like a mind reader? Are you making assumptions on the reason why this happened or how it's going to be solved? Is what I'm thinking helpful? So if you can identify those, we call them ants. When I teach youth, I call them ants, A-N-T-S, automatic negative thoughts. And when you have those ants crawling around in your brain, is it helpful? So if you're thinking, I can't believe this better not happen again. If she does the same thing, you know what? I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Is that helping, or is that making you more anxious and more angry and more unhealthy? And if it is, we really need to reframe that and rethink that. Do I have all the facts? Did you slow down and do a little bit of processing and ask some questions and find out, or are you just assuming and going off on your own perception as in, that's a young lady and I don't care what you say, there's no old lady there, it's a young lady? Do you have all the facts to slow down and have somebody else's perception? Am I communicating in a respectful way? Now that's those four styles of communication. Did you come up sideways? Is your attitude a little sharp? Are you being passive aggressive? Are you communicating? Because it takes two people to have a conflict. Two people. And even if the one person doesn't have the skills, you still need the skills on how to manage the person with no skills. Remember, when they're at their worst, you need to be at your best. Only if you care about the relationship, of course. If you don't care about the relationship, they come out up on you sideways, you can be sarcastic, you can use your skills, you can humiliate them, you can hurt them without, who cares? But if you value other people, if you have empathy for the other person, whether it's a close relationship or even an acquaintance on the street, that you need to communicate in a respectful way. It might not solve the problem, but it does help your self-esteem. It does help you be the professional one, right? Somebody has to grow up and respond in a healthier way, whether you value the relationship or not. And who can you talk to that can help? If we have conflict, then we go to our cohorts, our friends, either at work or in our family, and they just jump on board. Oh yeah, he does that all the time. Yeah, I can't believe it. And then everybody jumps on. That's not helpful. Who can you go talk to that has an objective point of view? Somebody that's not going to tell you what you want to hear. Somebody that's going to look at it outside the emotional drama that's happening and maybe open your eyes to how you're behaving. You don't want to hear it, but do you have somebody that can be objective and look at that challenging situation from a different angle? Because if we go to our cohorts and they just jump on board and agree with everything that's happening, that's not helping you at all. And you will actually be more conditioned to keep on the same unhealthy coping or communication skills and problem solving skills that you have, because you have the people saying, yeah, you're right, everybody else is wrong. And you keep doing what you are always doing. So we need to assert ourselves. And here's a little like 7-step process to state the problem just objectively. I feel concerned. when we don't let each other finish our statements because it seems like we're not hearing each other's points of view. Be understanding. This is like the most important one. Once you state the problem, empathize. Say, I can see your point. I can see why that happened, and I can see your point. That must be really difficult. Because that helps them drop their shield and say, wow, they understand me, cool. Then ask for the change. Let's find something else to do. How can we make sure this doesn't happen again? Are we willing to agree to do something else? So ask for a change. Offer suggestions. How about if we blank instead of blank? How about if we take a break, because I can see both of us are getting a little angry, and we can come up with some ideas and talk about it later. What ideas do you have? What options do we have so this doesn't happen again? They had this one situation where two people were fighting over a lemon and how to get a win-win. And both people need the lemon, and they'll go to fisticuffs to get that lemon because it's really valuable on what they're needing to do. But as they talked, one person realized that they just need the juice to, they're cooking something. And the other person was a bartender, and he wanted the rind to put on the rims. So until we can communicate what are our needs, what is your need right now? And then I have to tell you what my need is right now. And then what suggestions do we have that we can both get our needs met? Until we can talk and be safe enough to open up, then I can realize, wow, I can meet your needs pretty easy, and you can meet my needs pretty easy if we can communicate what they are in a healthy, safe, assertive, objective way. Because if we tell our needs passively or aggressively, the other person is not going to understand them or actually care about them because they're going to defend them. Another one, when it is solved, show appreciation. If their suggestion was accepted, say, wow, that was a really good idea. I'm glad you came up with that. I really appreciate that. I'm so glad that we had time to talk like that, because that encourages them for more healthy discussions in the future. And if it doesn't, express your regrets if the request isn't met, and let the other person know what actions you're going to take. I'm sorry, we can't agree on this. So, and then whatever the consequences are. I mean, every conflict is not going to be solved. You're going to tell them your needs, we're going to share our needs, but if they can't, then it says, well, I can see that this is really important to you, and we can't meet each other's needs, so it seems like we're going to have to end this relationship. And that's not a bad thing. If things can't get solved, there is going to be a consequence. And then follow through with what's right for you and respect the other person's choice. So this is just a great step-by-step. State the problem, empathize with that person. Empathize, I see you why you did that now. So you defended yourself because you thought I was trying to overstep you and take the credit for your work. You know what, wow, I can see why you were so reactive to me now. Ask for a change. So next time this happens, what do you think we can do before it gets kind of, angry and defensive? A quicker way to do this, especially with parent-child relationships, every strategy is as good as the relationship it's built on. If you don't have a good relationship, it's going to be hard to solve a problem, whether you're talking about parenting or work-related or just relationships for youth or adults or anybody. Understand the problem. We have to understand what it is. When you, I feel, because. Brainstorm some ideas. When you're brainstorming, if somebody comes up with a really horrible Solution. We can't say that's a stupid solution. We have to say, wow, that's one idea. What else you got? Because if we're brainstorming, we need to take every suggestion. And if you cut off one of the suggestions, that's it. That person's not going to share any more suggestions because they're like, you just asked me my opinion, then you tell me how stupid I am. I'm not giving you any more. So we have to be open to brainstorming. One stupid idea might lead somebody to another idea. That just might be an idea starter. Then after we have a brainstorm of 2 or 3 ideas, we're going to discuss, well, what might happen if we chose this idea? What might happen if we chose this idea? That's that whole processing of thinking about that consequence. What might happen if you did this? And then number 4, we choose the idea, a healthy and safe one, and we kind of use the idea for a trial period. Wow, that's a great idea. So we're both in agree that if you come home past curfew, that you'll stay home that weekend. Let's try that, this month or for the next couple weeks and see if it works. And that's a little quicker exploring alternatives. So in summary, we all have needs. And if we don't get our needs met, we're going to get them in a positive way or a negative way. We have to understand that our attitudes are the main things that's going to affect the problem-solving collaboration. Our communication styles, we really need to get rid of the emotion and just talk assertively and objectively. Monitor our anger. Don't flip your lid, and I'll talk about that in the anger management portion on Thursday. And then empathy and reframing. Looking at that problem not as a somebody that wants to hurt you, looking at that problem in a way that we both have different needs and we need to find a way that we can both meet those needs. And the risk factors of when people don't solve problems in a healthy way, it is a risk factor of self-medicating with drugs or alcohol. And then that assertive communication. All right, folks, we are coming at the end of our time here. Does anybody have any comments, concerns, interests? A great story of a problem that you solved really effectively? Did you guys learn anything, or did I just remind you of what you already know? And I think a lot of this, everybody heard that one book, Everything I Learned in Kindergarten, all right? Everything you need to know in life you learned in kindergarten?
No.
All right, look it up and read the poem on just Google it. Everything you need to know you learned in kindergarten. Keep your hands to yourself, be nice, say please and thank you, take naps in the middle of the day.
I like that one.
Yeah. Cookies and milk are a good snack. I mean, everything you learned, everything you need to know in life, you learned in kindergarten. I'm just here to remind you of the things that we learned through our lives.
I'm going to go back to the analogy you used with driving and cutting people off. There have been several times where I was driving and cut someone off because they were in my blind side and I didn't see them. And I wasn't, in a hurry to go nowhere. It's just that I didn't see that blind spot. And so when I cut them off, I made sure I slowed down and, made gestures of, please forgive me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. That was an accident.
Absolutely. And so then whenever I'm cut off, the first thought is always safety. But then, I just kind of regroup and keep it moving, because there are many times where I've cut people off because they were in my blind side and I didn't see them.
And have you had anybody beep at you and flip you off and kind of tailgate you?
No, I've not had that. But I've had people look at me really sternly, because again, when you cut someone off, there's imminent danger right then.
Mhm.
And so I expect them to go through a shocker period, if you will, because they're like, oh my God, I could have just had an accident. But
Yeah.
again, I immediately gesture, please forgive me. I'm sorry. I didn't see you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And I do the same thing. If I cut somebody off, I'm just like, you're like, oh my, I'm so sorry. They're angry. You can see they're angry and they're almost ready to flip you off. And you're like, it was my fault. I am so sorry. And they might calm down a little bit, or they still flip you off and get angry. We have no control over that.
Yeah. And I don't blame them when they do, because again, like I said, the first initial thought for anyone is, oh my God, safety. I was
Yeah.
almost in an accident. They almost caused me to crash. So, I get it. I do.
Yep. All right, folks. Well, thank you for your time and attention. And we'll see you on Thursday for some anger management.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everybody, for joining. And we'll see everyone on Thursday. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.